Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the MacKenzie Network. Have a special guest today that is going to be on our Careers from Home startup entrepreneurs to seasoned entrepreneurs. And this lady, I hand selected her because let's face it, if you're in business, you gotta make money, and you gotta have processing machines, and you have to be able to have merchant accounts and merchant services to be able to get money. Well, a lot of people don't know how or where to go, and there's so much confusion. It's like a big hidden secret. So I've done my research. In fact, I have a little bit of a background in this over the years of business, and have met quite a few people. I've had my own accounts myself. And so when I met her and she started sharing all these nuggets with me, I was just blown away. I said, you have to be on my show because entrepreneurs need to know you. And she does this on a global level. And I just love the name Integrity Payment Processing. And so that's what we're all about here at the MacKenzie Network. We're all about vetting our people, making sure that you're getting the best service and the best connections and the best advice that you can get from the top people in whatever industry that we bring forward to you. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Miss Livia Caudell here. And why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about where you're from, and just a little bit. I'd like to find a little bit about this entrepreneurship, because we're talking about entrepreneurship spirits with kids, young ones. What is it that got you set up and into wanting to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. And the first time we met, just kindred souls. So love your heart, love your spirit, love what you're doing here. So thank you for having me. So my name is Livia Caudell. I'm the owner of Integrity Payment Processing. And, since I was a little girl, I just had an entrepreneurial spirit. I used to sell my toys in a red wagon door to door in our apartment complex. My parents thought that was pretty funny. I would put little sticky notes on cans of, Pepsi or Coke that was in the fridge, pay Livia 50 cents, just always doing lemonade stands, popsicle stands, you name it. So it's in my blood. I would say a big contributor to that was my father. He started up many companies when I was a kid, and, he had some great success, and then self-sabotage, and then, off to the new things, success, self-sabotage. So, I really got an idea of what to do and what not to do. Love my father dearly. And, it was definitely a journey, but I got to be around his personality and his mindset, his $1 million mindset, because he's made millions before. And so I would just pay attention when he would be on calls and, selling and, just his leadership and empowerment and sales. And I just was like, it's possible, it's like there's this moment in time where hopefully you get this experience where something just clicks in your mind and your heart and your spirit, and this possibility of being able to be an entrepreneur becomes alive within you. Like you really get like, holy crap, it's possible. I could actually build a business and potentially make millions of dollars, and so I got to see that at a very young age, and I'm very grateful. Obviously childhood was not, the best, lots of domestic violence and those kinds of things. And I'm just sharing that on a personal level, because it doesn't matter where you came from. My mom was, struggling to pay the bills. So you don't have to come from a successful family, by any means. Nothing was handed to me on a silver platter. It definitely took a lot of persistence, but I just want to encourage anyone who's, suffered in their childhood, that entrepreneurship is a real thing, and you can overcome any obstacles.
I really like that you're bringing that up, because, I like this show to really be real and truthful, and not just scripted, but we really talk one-on-one, and we're heart-centered. And I'm just thinking, did you ever feel when you were younger, at that, that young age, did you ever feel there was something a little different about you? Did you feel like you just didn't fit in with just all the kids, and you're looking at different jobs and people are talking, and you're in your mind, you're thinking, I don't want to do that, but you didn't want to say anything because maybe you're like, you don't want them to think you're nuts, or you don't fit in with the kids or your friends. You ever feel that way?
Oh my God. I mean, you really nailed it. And in fact, as you were sharing that, like I was just getting all these flashbacks, as being a child, I would see, like for instance, the pollution, right? And people not recycling. And I'm just like, something's seriously wrong here, and then when I learned about there were foreign countries that were third world, and they're impoverished and they don't have anything. I mean, it just would like, yeah, I felt like people just were kind of asleep, like, hey, there's real issues where I believe entrepreneurs can solve these issues by creating businesses that solve global issues. And I had that awareness as a child. And I definitely felt like I was, one of the few that could see that, you know what I mean? Like there was a lot missing. In fact, so much so, in my high school years, I was just really resigned and cynical because I was like, is this life? This is all that there is. We go to school, potentially go to college, get out of college, get a job, get married, have your perfect 2.5 kids and your white picket fence. I mean, I was very resigned and cynical. And I remember in my sophomore year of high school, I started telling, all my friends and maybe even younger that I was going to move to Florida, build businesses and make millions of dollars. And everybody laughed at me. They're like, oh, she's such a dreamer. You're never going to accomplish anything. And I did. I left Kansas where I'm from. I moved to Florida and I was in real estate, selling real estate education. When I was 18, making over $100,000 a month, or not $100,000 a month. That would have been great. $100,000 a year, flying around the United States, getting to see all parts of the world, and did really well in real estate, which led me to my career in the payment processing space, which we'll, talk about here soon.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. For some reason, I think that a lot of times people think that you just wake up and here's your business and everything. They don't know this other side of the story. Like you probably had to go through getting, it sounds like there was some domestic violence and trauma there as a child. You had to get through some of that stuff to get your head set in the direction you wanted to go. People don't see that. People don't see all those things that make somebody successful. So I love to be able to pull that out. And thank you for, just being so real with us and vulnerable with it, opening up your vulnerability to us on TV. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you acknowledging that because I think that is a huge, even for me, sometimes when I'm scrolling in Facebook and I see all these people, that look very successful. And there's been times where I've felt envious, or I look at them and I think to myself, well, I'm not good enough to do what they're doing. And, so I understand the stuff that's going on in the background. And especially if you're in a job and you're trying to switch to becoming an entrepreneur, that for me, when I made that switch, because I did work for other people, made a great living, but I had to really, really take a giant step, a courageous step, and say, I'm going to build my business. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I'm not going to go back to a job. So that decision took many years and a tremendous amount of courage and faith that I could do it. So that's what I did back in 2016. I actually ended up getting some funding, credit card funding, business credit card, 0% interest, got, $75,000. I paid my bills, I built my business, and I haven't looked back since. So yeah, there's definitely trauma.
I love that. So let's talk now about the big thing here and why so many people need to know and understand this topic, because they could be leaving thousands to millions of dollars on the table, depending how much business they do in a year. Correct. Yeah. A lot of money that goes through when you swipe those that you just take one swipe that the merchant has to pay that you're really, the public's not aware of, but as merchants, you get so, I mean, as the entrepreneur, you're so excited, like, oh, I can take money. Oh, well, guess what? Somebody's going to see you coming, buddy. And they're going to say, yeah, this person don't know what they're doing. Let's just sign you on the dotted line. You see that happen every day. And I know you do, because we've talked about it, because this is one of the biggest secret industries around. There's no books on it. If there is, it's very hidden, because nobody really because they want to make money. So nobody tells you what's behind the scenes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let you take over now and please tell us about how all this works and why integrity payment processing is the only place that people should go.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that. And I want to kind of underline what you're talking about in terms of information that's out there, there's definitely not a lot of information out there in terms of merchant accounts. Even when I got into this industry, obviously knew nothing about it. And I had no training, no support. I mean, I basically self-taught, learned the industry myself, got in, figured out how to play the game so I can make a difference with my customers and my clients. So one of the things, I saw that was missing, obviously, in any industry, there can be a lack of integrity, right? From healthcare to education to, car sales, to payment processing. So obviously seeing the lack of integrity, mostly the pricing models. Most business owners don't know that there's 4 different pricing models when setting up a merchant account. And typically the merchant provider will basically give you whatever rate they want to offer. So what I love to do is educate business owners about the 4 different pricing models so they're clear about where their money is going.
Right.
Because most people just don't know. And unfortunately, I've spoke with, top executives of multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar companies. And it's, it never ceases to amaze me how much people don't know. And you're right, there's not enough information out there. So one of the most scrupulous, tactic pricing models out there, I would say, is tiered pricing. And tiered pricing is one of those models where they'll say, oh yeah, you'll only pay 1.19%. Well, that's actually not true. That's a bait and switch. They get you in with these teaser rates, is what they're called. And then they put you on a tiered pricing model, which means that there's 3 tiers, 1, 2, 3, and there's qualified, mid-qualified, and non-qualified cards. Basically, the tier 1, they're only paying, let's say, 1.19% on the tier 1 percentage. But if they have other cards outside of the ones that they selected, it could add up to be 6, 7, 8%. So it's just one of those things where the merchant providers, they create their own pricing when they use that pricing model. Typically, they can make more money as a result. And unfortunately, they get people sucked in believing they're paying a very low rate when in fact they're not. So what I have committed to doing inside of my organization is we only use interchange plus pricing model. Let me explain what that means. So there are interchange fees that Visa, Discover, MasterCard, American Express, they all charge a percentage and a transaction fee to use their cards, right? Then there's also the issuing bank that issued you the credit card. Then there's the merchant provider where we basically take on the risk. We set up your merchant account, customer service, all of that. So when you're paying your fees, there's actually 3 organizations that are being paid out. Obviously, the card brands are making the big bucks. Okay, let's just face it. They know what they're doing. And then the issuing banks also get paid out of that, and then the merchant provider. And why I'm saying this is because in tiered pricing, you don't see on the actual processing statement what merchant processing fees you're paying that the provider gives you. You can't see that in the statement. So you don't get a clear idea of what the provider is actually charging you. Whereas an interchange plus model, the interchange fees, again, are the card brand fees. And so we say interchange plus whatever percent, 0.5%, 1%, plus 20 cents a transaction. So we're making 1% plus 20 cents a transaction plus the interchange fees. So on your statement, it's going to show what the card brands are making in terms of, the processing fees, what cut they get, but it's also going to show you what we as a merchant provider are charging you. Okay. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it just really breaks it down so you know how much we're actually charging you. Whereas in tiered pricing, they don't have to reveal that on the processing statements. So that's one big thing. And I would say all the Fortune 500 companies, they all do interchange plus pricing. They know. A big part of it too is, debit cards, for instance, the interchange fee is very small, like 0.05%. So some people use PayPal, right? It's about 3% plus 30 cents a transaction typically. Well, here's the deal. If you're using PayPal and your customer uses a debit card, well, the interchange fee is only 0.05%. So if we charged you 0.25% over interchange, you would only be charged as the business owner 0.3% plus the transaction fees. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you take 3% minus 2.5%, that's 2.75% you're saving as an entrepreneur. It's just like blows my mind. One other thing I want to say about PayPal, Stripe, all of these payment facilitators, absolutely, there's definitely a place and a time to use that, especially when you're in your startup time. With a merchant account, there are monthly fees. There's a PCI compliance survey that has to get filled out. So when I talk to business owners, in the startup phase, absolutely use PayPal, use Square, Stripe, any of those platforms. But once you get to be, doing over like 10,000 a month, it's better to get a merchant account, because not only can you save money, but these PayPal, Stripe, and these facilitators, they're not real merchant accounts.
Wow.
It's called a payment facilitator. So basically, if you think of it like PayPal has this giant merchant account and you're getting a little piece of their merchant account as a sub user. Mm-hmm. So when you're in PayPal's network, they can do whatever they want. So for instance, they shut down, accounts, they hold on to your money. I've had so many entrepreneurs, especially in the coaching, consulting, seminar arena, anything over $2,000 per transaction is a high risk transaction. And so any payment facilitator online is going to red flag that and want to look at that. They may hold your money for a period of time while they're assessing the risk, and it can just be a complete nightmare. Not to mention the customer service is terrible. Yeah. Because, they've got millions of users. And so when you try to call somebody on a 1-800 number, it takes hours to get on the phone with somebody, so that could be very frustrating, especially when you're doing high volumes.
So a couple other things, just kind of curious about, I know back in the day, it used to, well, not that long ago, but back in the day, the big part of getting money for the merchant services was the machines, and they were like, huge,
oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So what's happened with that and with the paper? I mean, I've heard some people, oh, we'll give you free paper supply if you go with us, and we'll give you a free machine. I mean, what's that all about?
Yeah. So, well, it's funny. It's like, okay, so our iPhones, I remember when they were flip phones, right? So yeah, I mean, the technology out there is still pretty kind of old fashioned, if you ask me. Today's day and age is 2021. I think our technology should be a lot more advanced. But I say that all to say that, yeah, if you have a retail store, and particularly right now, we've been focusing, on cannabis dispensaries, CBD companies, Kratom. Those kinds of companies and products are called high risk. So we've got payment solutions, and there's very few of them that are compliant, and I've got those. So we've been really focusing on that. When it comes to retail stores, like spas, attorneys, gas stations, what have you. Yeah, there's technology where you can get a free card swiper. Even the Clovers, those are pretty popular for like spas and, doctor offices and dentists and chiropractors and all that fun stuff. I can absolutely help people get started. Again, I want to emphasize, I don't lock people into contracts. I don't think that's a fair thing to do. If you don't want to do business with me, I don't want you having to be stuck doing business with me. I don't like that people do that. And fortunately, as I own the company and I work with different banks, I can set those features. I also like to eliminate a lot of the junk fees as well. But what I would say that I mostly have specialized in is high risk merchant accounts.
Love it.
So anywhere between nutraceutical supplements, anyone who sells any kind of supplement online, that's called a high risk account. I've got banks where I can get, like one of my clients, Alpha Lion, you can go to my website, their testimonial is there. They sell whey protein. And when they came to me, they were paying about 2.5% over interchange. I've cut their rate in half and actually lower than that. And they had what's called a reserve on their previous account, a 10% reserve. So if you're in a high risk industry, any high risk processor, they're going to want you to sign a 10% rolling reserve, meaning 10% of your sales will go into an escrow account every month for them to assess the risk. And if there's any chargebacks, they have money to pay the chargebacks, because that's really the risk processors are taking on, is the risk of chargebacks, right? And so I've been very successful in getting high risk businesses the volume that they need with no reserve. And the reason is because I have built massive relationships, both domestically and internationally. And every single bank has their own processes, regulations, rules, and every one of them is different. And then every different company has their own amount of capital that they can put out or risk, right? So, some of the larger banks, we can get these high risk accounts with no reserve because they're multi-billion, if not multi-trillion-dollar organizations, and they're not worried about losing thousands of dollars to chargebacks or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. So I've just seen so many people spend months and months getting kind of just screwed around. Good friend of mine, Angela, they own a healing sanctuary here in Las Vegas. And they were working with a company for 4 months, and they said, we can only get you 10,000 a month in volume, and you're going to have a 10% reserve. My friend Angela calls me. She knows I'm in the space. She's like, girlfriend, hook it up. And within literally 3 days, I got them set up, got them approved for $50,000 with no reserve. 3 days.
Love it. Love it. Well,
so
great.
Yeah. Some people say, you make processing really sexy. And I'm like, you know what? I like that, because it can be a very boring topic. But when you're talking about your bottom line and the amount of money that you can save, 10% reserve, that takes a lot of money out of your cash flow to put back into your business. So, that's a huge deal. So I really pride myself in having my customers back. I really act as the merchant's agent. I want to save you money, guarantee to save you money. I want to give you great customer service, get you the best terms in terms of like the contract and no reserves. And I'm also, with a lot of big high risk organizations, it's not about just getting one merchant account. We want to get 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5, depending on the packages you're selling, depending on what organization or industry type that you're in, depending on what your high ticket transaction is. So diversifying and having multiple merchant accounts is very important. And I can, set up a lot of merchant accounts because I have so many relationships with so many banks.
I love it. And I love the international side that you do. And just, what I love is, folks, you're getting Livia. This is who you're getting. So you're having issues, something's going on. This is who you're calling, correct? We're going to be calling you to get, if there's run into a problem. So it's not just like the salesperson coming in, you see him one time and bye-bye, see you later, never hear from you again, right? It's not that. And not only that, how many years now you were, well, I'm not going to say how old you were when you started. Pretty young. I'm not going to give that away, but, you've been doing this for a while. So your reputation, your credibility, it can travel really fast, especially some of the networking circles that we work in. Your name is out there. Absolutely. And it's bad. So you definitely have Livia to help and support you with that. What are some future things that you possibly might be seeing happening? Is there any, with the way that we're seeing industries and things change, is there any upcoming nuggets you could give us, or things that you've been seeing that maybe the average we wouldn't know, but you've seen on your side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the processing side of things, obviously with technology, things are evolving very quickly. And obviously with blockchain technology, it's allowed the payment processing world to be able to do things that we never were able to do prior to the technology being released. And that's why we're able to, set up merchant accounts for cannabis dispensaries to take debit and credit cards because of the blockchain technology. It's called peer-to-peer transaction. So that is a trending thing that's happening right now. And we've got obviously great solutions for, all of that. Definitely, staying ahead of the times and making sure that we're looking at the trends and where the future is going in payment processing. It's always shifting and sorting. And I like to be on the front end of things. And making the solutions as streamlined as possible for the merchants. And really also too, there's no like one size fits all for every client. So that's another thing I really pride myself on is I want to hear what the client's needs are, and we'll custom tailor solutions specifically for your company and your needs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's another thing too, because I'm not just married to one bank. I've got over 20 banks. So that's what I love to do. I don't like turning down business. I never would want to do that. So I've, as a result, have built all these great relationships with all these different banks. So I never have to turn away business. And that's why we're able to really board any business type across the board, guarantee to save them money. And of course, the customer support. Absolutely. I'm the CEO of the company. I do have a staff and a sales team, but my clients do get my direct line. So if there's ever any issues, they're not calling a 1-800, number and getting someone in India. No offense, all good. I'm all about business process outsourcing. But when it's your money and your business is like, that's got to keep going. So if there's ever any issues, they get my number and they can call me so we can handle any issues right now.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So really, those of you that have interest in and just meeting with this lovely lady and just sitting and just getting a consultation, please let her know, her staff know that that you heard about her from the MacKenzie Network. Also, on the MacKenzieNetwork.com site, we have under featured guest. She actually has a code down. You click on it and you'll get some extra special things just from saying that you saw her from the show today. So I want to thank you again so much for coming and making this very, very, it's not every day you get to hear the person growing up and their story and all these great things and the nuggets. And just thank you for doing all the wonderful work that you're doing out there. And it was just a pleasure to interview you today. And I look forward to seeing you very soon at another event.
Awesome.
And yeah. And then everybody remember our tagline here at the MacKenzie Network is what? It is every connection creates an impact. We will see you on the next show. Have a good one, guys.